Welcome to the Shootin' Show, brought to you in part by Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt, Executive Director, and by Shooting Times Magazine, and also by Springfield Armory, Wesson Firearms, the United States Practical Shooting Association, Dillon Precision, Ducks Unlimited, the International Handgun Metallic Silhouette Association, Clark Custom Guns, Shotgun News, Fort Knox, Wyoming Arms, and a number of other good friends and supporters.
Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, and welcome to another edition of the Shootin' Show. We're so glad you could join us here this week. We've got another great show in store for you. We're going to bring back Colonel Art Alphin, Lieutenant Colonel retired Art Alphin, and another one of his programs from West Point. We have some good gun tests for you. We'll have some other fine guests. We're glad you can join us, so let's let another Shootin' Show begin. Well, friends, this week we're going to feature a most unusual handgun, and this is something that a lot of people, I think, have seen the advertisements. They've seen some things in magazines on this particular gun, but we have borrowed one from our good friends at Britain's Gun Shop in Shreveport, and this is the Desert Eagle, and it's in 44 Magnum caliber, which we normally think of a 357 or 44 Magnum as a revolver cartridge, which they primarily are, but the good folks at Magnum Research have designed a gun that will reliably feed the rimmed revolver cartridges. So for someone that wants Magnum performance, certainly if they have a revolver and already have those cases available to them for hand loading, or if they just happen to like the 44 Magnum, or I believe this also comes in 41 Magnum and in 357, which was the original, you might take a look at one of these guns. It's made in Israel by the Israel Military Industries, IMI, and tell you the truth, I really haven't had a lot of experience with these guns. This is the first one I've ever shot, in fact, but it is extremely well made. You can tell it is a big and heavy gun. This one has about a 6-inch or so barrel, and we're going to compare it in size. Here is our 5-inch Smith & Wesson 629 Classic DX, which we're testing and certainly enjoying. And here is the Desert Eagle, and you can tell they're actually pretty close in size. Of course, the revolver holds 6 shots, and the Desert Eagle, which has a magazine like most other semi-automatic handguns, loads through the base here. It will hold 8 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. Now, most of you know that I really do not particularly prefer semi-automatics over revolvers, or vice versa. It just depends on what you like and what you're doing with the gun. But these are extremely strong and well made. I was really impressed when I took the gun down on just how it is made. It has a rotary bolt, and we're going to get a close-up of this in just a moment, but I'll put the magazine in to pull the slide back there. Here we go. And it goes without saying that, yes, I have checked these guns more than one time to be sure they're unloaded. But it has a rotary bolt, what we normally think of in a semi-automatic rifle, to lock the action. It is a gas-operated pistol, unlike the Browning of 1911. Of course, here's our government model Colt, which we're going to do something with a little later in the show. But the Colt is a recoil-operated pistol, and of course the Desert Eagle is a gas-operated pistol. Now, what that means is when the cartridge fires, you have some gas ports in just forward of the firing chamber itself, and gas comes from those ports down here in a passageway to the front of the barrel, where it has some holes in the bottom, and the gas reacts on a piston, which in turn drives the slide back, and of course it ejects the fired case and loads another one. It has 2 recoil springs. It's a very well thought out, very well made pistol. So let's see if we can get a close-up of this and let you look at it a little bit closer. All right, friends, you can tell. Again, I'll bring this 629, and it's pretty close actually to in size for the 629. And you can see, I'll pull the slide back, you can see, I believe, the locking lugs on the rotary bolt. And all the surfaces are thick. This is not a lightweight handgun. It comes down very simply for cleaning. And of course I've taken the magazine out. And you have a lever here. I'll go ahead and take the barrel. Okay, well that's simple enough. And you'll see the barrel literally just lifts off of it like so. And looking into the gun, you can see the dual recoil springs. And in fact, it's they're wound springs, like similar to what's used on the AK series guns, and it has an extra spring inside the larger wound spring. So it's just simple as can be. It just comes apart. And of course, here's your frame, and here are your double recoil springs here, and here's your gas piston. And I hope you can see that fairly, here we go, a little clearer. There's your piston right there, and of course here's your slide and the rotating bolt. Now I'll push the bolt to the rear, and you can actually see it turn. And I'll press the bolt down, and you can actually see how it turns. And of course that's what locks it into the recesses in the barrel around the chamber. So again, very well made. The metal surfaces are smooth, and it's just a most unusual concept that a lot of us haven't seen before. But we'll shoot this in just a moment and let you get a look at how the gun looks in action. Now friends, I want to remind you that the Desert Eagle has some limitations on what it will do. Because it is a gas-operated action, the use of lead bullets are not recommended, because you don't want to foul the ports in the barrel, because that's how the gun works. You've got to have the gas action running down the barrel to these holes here to push the slide back. So you can't shoot lead bullets, such as cast bullets or soft lead, whatever, in these guns, because it literally will stop up the ports. And tell you the truth, if you got them stopped up, I don't know how you'd clean them out, because those are either cast in or drilled metal holes. So that's just something that you just don't do. So what is recommended are jacketed bullets like this Winchester silver tip, or even we have some 240 grain Remingtons here, which are semi-jacketed. But of course, even though they have a lot of exposed lead, the jacket is what contacts the walls of the chamber, so you don't have to worry about leading. So that is a limitation that is extremely important, and it just goes along with, if you want one of these guns, well, you're going to feed it what its required diet is. These guns retail for around $800, and after looking at the gun and seeing how it's made, I can understand why it's as expensive as it is, because it has literally, it's like a short rifle. It has a rifle type action, and in fact wouldn't be a bad rifle if you put a stock on this thing, a little longer barrel. It might be interesting. Tell you what, it'd be a heck of a deer carbine. But anyway, we're going to let you look at the gun in recoil from shooting. It will not be as severe because it is a gas operated action. Of course the gun is big and heavy, so you're going to get some muzzle flip, of course, but as far as being brutal, it's really not. The grip is fairly wide. It's pretty comfortable. The only objection that I really have on the gun, and I'm sure that this is easily remedied, the guns have fixed sights. And for a cartridge like the .44 Magnum, which your capabilities out at, it's really a useful cartridge out to 100 yards or a little further, and that's the one thing that I would change immediately. I would put a good adjustable sight on it. This one at 100 yards is pretty far off, as far as you have to use a lot of Kentucky windage. Now, of course, this sight is drift adjustable. You can tap it with a brass punch or something from side to side. You can adjust for windage, but it's considerably off for elevation. But I really don't see that as a huge problem. That's the first thing I would do, would be put a strong adjustable sight on there. So anyway, let's watch the gun when we shoot it and just see what it looks like when it goes off. Now any of the Magnum guns are shall we say, not for the faint of heart, but or not for beginners. I wouldn't recommend this gun at all for a beginner, but they are fun once you understand what they are and how to properly manage them. Now friends, I've loaded several cartridges in the magazine and of course put it in the base, and personally I'm not sure how you would carry this gun. I suppose the safest way, and let me take the magazine out for a moment, and we know it's unloaded, yes. Probably the safest way to carry this one, if you wanted one chambered, would be carry it with the hammer down, and the safety of course goes from down for on safe and up for off, and I'm supposing carry it just off the firing pin. The safety will go on this particular gun on half cock. So I'm thinking that would be the way if you wanted to carry this in a holster with one chambered, and to get the gun ready to fire, what you would do would push the safety off and thumb cock it. Now out here on the range when we're moving between targets or whatever, then you could have the gun cocked with the safety on, because it disconnects the trigger and it locks the firing pin when you put the safety on the gun. So that would be my choice. I would not carry this gun shall we say, cocked with the safety locked in the on position, because I'm always concerned that you might accidentally or inadvertently push the safety off, and then you have a cocked 44 Magnum in your holster. So since it doesn't have a grip safety, and a lot of you know that I'm a big proponent of grip safeties on semi-automatic guns, especially the single action guns. So that would be my choice to carry the gun, would be to lower the hammer. And in this particular case, half cock is on the 1911s is not how to carry the gun, but in this particular case, you can pull the hammer back to the first notch there and put the safety on. So then, of course, the trigger is out of operation. You can still cock the gun, but if somehow it did get cocked, you'd still have your safety on. And of course, the other way to carry this gun would be an empty chamber, condition 3, empty chamber and loaded magazine. So let's let you look at it for a moment. We're going to insert the magazine, be sure it's all the way in the base. It's very important. And this semi-automatic is no different in some areas from any other semi-automatic. The condition of your magazine is absolutely critical. If you don't have a properly fitting or properly adjusted magazine, and you'd say, well, how can you get a magazine out of adjustment? Well, just drop it on something hard and let these feed lips hit on something, and yeah, it's out of adjustment. So anyway, your magazine is critical on this gun as it is on any other semi-automatic handgun. But to load it, as you've heard me say all these times, and I'll say again, just like I always talk about, we always have eye protection, and I've already got my hearing protection in. Load the gun, pull the slide all the way to the rear, and let it go, and let the spring load the gun. And of course, I'm going to apply the safety, because we're going to handle it here for just a moment. All right, friends, let's shoot the gun a couple or 3 times and let you see what it looks like and recoil in my hands. Now, friends, as you saw, its recoil is not that severe. Any 44 Magnum is going to recoil some, but it is controllable. Now, a lot of people out there are saying, well, Johnny, would you rather have this Desert Eagle over a 44 Magnum revolver? Well, no, but if I were looking for a semi-automatic Magnum handgun, this would be one of my first choices. I happen to like revolvers because you can always find your Magnum cases, and of course we reload out almost everything here, but that's not saying that it's not as good as a revolver. It's just different. It just depends on what you like. If your choice is a semi-automatic over a revolver, well, that's fine, and this will be one to take a look at. And if you like revolvers, there's not a huge advantage because the revolvers can be reloaded rapidly, but you do have less felt recoil. And we chronographed a couple of different loads out of this Desert Eagle, and the velocities are essentially the same as our 5-inch 629 Classic. So looking for a lot of extra velocity with this barrel length, you're not going to get it, but it still performs very well. And the accuracy potential on these guns is supposed to be real good. Ours looks good. We haven't run any long-range accuracy tests simply because it's so hard with these fixed sights to get it sighted in and have an exact aiming point. But again, for what it is, the gun is very well made. You can tell they spent a lot of time in engineering. I would think the service life would be a long time on these guns, and they certainly deserve a look. So let's take one of these Remington 240 grain jacketed hollow points. And no, I'm not going to shoot any steel targets because the 44s just tear them up. And let's load the gun like so. So let's shoot our ferocious laundry soap jug over here filled with detergent. And I do want to say the triggers are pretty good on these Desert Eagles. At least the trigger's good on this one. It's easy to shoot. So let's see what the full charge Remington 44 Magnum looks like on this water jet.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after this break for your local cable company or television station. We want to remind you of our good friends at Shooting Times Magazine, the absolute best general information shooting magazine available on your newsstand today. They have all sorts of articles on handguns and long guns and hunting and all sorts of information about reloading and gun safety and many, many other fine features by some of your favorite firearms writers. For subscription information, call Shooting Times at 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is. Now, friends, by just looking, you'd never guess that this petite young lady is carrying not one, but in fact 2 handguns. And this is the fantastic concept of the shadow concealment systems. And you'll notice as she unbuttons her sweater, she's carrying a full-size .357 on her left, and she's carrying a Ladysmith on her right. This is one of the neatest concepts that I have ever seen for concealed holsters. And here she is again. Again, you'd never guess that she's carrying a full-size .45 ACP semi-automatic handgun along with 2 magazines in the shadow concealment systems holsters. They fit inside the pants, and it's amazing how comfortable they are. And this is something we highly recommend because in many areas, concealed handgun permits are available. I would sincerely suggest getting a catalog from Shadow Concealment Systems at Post Office Box 3952, Wilmington, North Carolina. Their zip code is 28406, or give them a call at area 919-791-6656. Trust me on this one. This is a great idea and a tremendous concept, and a lot of us could really find uses for these.
When you're armed, you can just say no.
Now, friends, on last week's program, we had this tremendous enhanced government model from Colt, and I think that if you saw last week's program, you know how impressed I am with this particular gun. It is, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of, if not the very finest semi-automatic pistol I ever shot. And this doesn't go to say that the other manufacturers don't make very fine semi-automatics, because many of them do. But this Colt is as good as anything I have ever picked up and had the opportunity to shoot and handle. But you know, we talk about all kinds of things here on the Shootin' Show. So this week, we have a couple of accessories that may be of interest to several of us out there. And these, we have a full-length recoil spring guide from AccuSystems. And we also have a slide-mounted compensator. Now, for those of you who don't know what a compensator is, on the match guns for action shooting or shooting for IPSC, many of the guns will have a compensator out here on the end of the barrel to assist in keeping the muzzle of the gun down, and they have some other recoil reducing accessories such as this system from AccuSystems. But what it does, it enables you to get back on your target or to the next target quicker. And you know, friends, a lot of these matches are won not by tenths of a second, but in fact by hundredths of a second. So any little advantage, such as a compensator or anything else you might do, some little something to the gun to improve its performance, might make the difference in winning or in fact losing a match. Now, this compensator is different from most of the ones that a lot of us have seen, in that it doesn't go on the end of the barrel. It in fact fits into the slide. Now, it replaces the barrel bushing inside the slide. And tell you the truth, when the good folks at AccuSystems sent us this package, I didn't know if it was going to work or not. But I'm happy to report that in fact it does work. And when you use the compensator in conjunction with their special recoil reducing full-length guide rod for the recoil spring, it really cuts down on muzzle jump and helps you get back on whatever target you're shooting quickly. And we're going to give a little demonstration of this in just a moment. But these pieces from AccuSystems are indeed well made. I'm most impressed with the quality, and about the best reference I can give them is they work. So we're going to be featuring Wayne Baldwin a little bit later from AccuSystems. He was in town this weekend for the gun show, and I think you're really going to enjoy meeting with him because they offer some other products that he's going to tell us about a little bit later on. Now, installation of these parts is really pretty simple, and they supply a full set of instructions, and it's really not difficult at all to install once you understand the basics. If you know enough to take your gun apart and clean it, well, you probably can install the AccuSystems compensator and full-length recoil spring guide. Now, you'd say, what advantage does this have over the other or barrel-mounted compensator? Well, it doesn't have certainly no advantage at all, except it's very easy to change out. Now, personally, I carry this government model Colt on pretty regular in my job, and one, it's so simple and quick to take the compensator off. Say if I want to shoot this in a match today or the weekend, whenever, I can do that and maybe pick up half a second or so in total time during the match, or more, hopefully. And then to bring the gun back to stock to carry it, all I have to do is just slip it off. So it is also less expensive than going for a full-blown compensator set, a custom barrel rig. So it lets you use your stock gun barrel with the gun, and it is convenient and very simple to use and interchange. So we'll let you see in just a moment. We'll look at what the stock gun does as far as muzzle flip, because that's what we're concerned with. And this gun is already so accurate, I told Wayne with AccuSystems that, well, this one's going to be hard to improve on. But typically, using their recoil spring guide, it increases accuracy on the 1911s, because what it does, it forces the barrel a little more firmly into the recesses in the slide. It forces the lugs up in there consistently and does make them more accurate, and you can really start to see it at 25 to 50 yards on these guns. Now, friends, I hope you can see this pretty well, but the compensator is extremely well made. It depends on what manufacturer of your 1911 or the particular size of your barrel. This one was a little bit tight for the gun barrel on this Colt, so they instructed me on how to fit it. I took some 320 black sandpaper and put it on a 3/8 inch dowel, and I sanded and turned inside the bushing here until I got it runs, the barrel will go back and forth inside the bushing easily, but it's not sloppy. So it took me a few minutes to do that, but it's easy to do if you just take your time and use a little care. And of course, here is the full-length recoil guide. It doesn't have the edges on it like the standard Colt recoil spring plug, but it slows down the slide in cycling and supposedly will extend the life of the barrel of the slide against the frame there, because it does actually slow down the unlocking cycle. It does reduce recoil. So it has a flat wound spring, and internally here it has a captive 60-pound spring. Now they make these systems for several different guns, including the Grizzly, which is based on the 1911. So it is impressive. It's well made, and a couple of friends of mine have these, and several of us are trying these and just seeing how they do work. And I can say that this one does. So we're going to look at it in just a moment. Okay, friends, let's watch the muzzle flip on our Colt shooting factory hardball rounds from Federal. And I'm going to hold the gun just like I normally would, because for us to have a fair test, of course, that's what has to be done. So watch the muzzle flip and recoil of the stock gun with a stock 230 grain loading. Now, friends, you'll notice we have installed the compensator on the end of the barrel. We have put the recoil reducing spring system in. So watch the muzzle flip as compared to a moment ago when we were shooting just the stock gun. So watch the muzzle. I think you saw that the muzzle did not rise as much. In fact, it's quite a bit. It is amazing, and you don't feel as much recoil. So we're going to be talking to Wayne a little more about this. And you know, friends, the AccuSystem custom parts just make it a little more fun to shoot. It makes it a little quicker to hit these targets. And shooting is what this is all about. Well, I hit the last one, but it locked on the target stand. I believe I'll shoot it again.
The Shooting Show will be back in 1 minute after this break for your local cable comedy or television station.
It's fast. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's fun. This is the USPSA, United States Practical Shooting Association, the fastest growing sport in America today. If you'd like to become more proficient and confident with your firearm, meet new and interesting people, and compete with thousands around the world, join the USPSA. There's a local chapter near you.
And now for our information from Gun Owners of America.
This is Larry Pratt with a commentary from Gun Owners of America. 10 years ago in March, City officials in Kennesaw, Georgia began a bold experiment. They enacted a law requiring every household to own a firearm, exempting those with criminal records or religious objections. The results of the experiment have been phenomenal, showing that armed citizens deter crime. An early study in 1982 found that the residential burglary rate had fallen 89% in the 7 months following the law's enactment. This drop far outpaced the more modest 10.4% drop in the entire state of Georgia during that same period. Even 10 years later, Kennesaw's home burglary rate remained 72% below what it had been before the law was passed. The result was not unexpected by the sponsors of the law. A law like Kennesaw's, requiring a gun in every home, should deter residential burglars the most. Criminals who know that a homeowner is armed will usually avoid such a home for fear of being shot. But what about the murder rate? Did Kennesaw become a magnet for crime? Have they become a new version of the proverbial Dodge City? No. Last year, not one murder was committed in this suburb of Atlanta. In other words, guns have not caused a crime epidemic, and criminals attempt fewer crimes because they, presumably, fear being shot. By contrast, there is one city where criminals have literally no fear of being shot by a potential victim. The city is Washington, D.C. In 1976, city officials enacted one of the most restrictive gun control laws in the nation, making it virtually impossible for law-abiding citizens to own, let alone carry, a gun. The result is that D.C.'s murder rate has escalated 134% since 1975, while the national rate has dropped 2% during that same period. Virginia often gets blamed by anti-gunners for Washington's crime problems because gun laws in Virginia are less unconstitutional. In other words, guns are more available legally. Well, if crooks are getting their guns in Virginia, why isn't the murder rate in Virginia even higher than in D.C.? Obviously, it is not the guns that are causing the district's problem. Gun owners owe the city of Kennesaw a word of thanks. They have underscored the point that the people need guns for their own defense, and that when we are given the chance, we do so effectively and responsibly.
For more information on Gun Owners of America, write to them at 8001 Forbes Place, Suite 102, Springfield, Virginia. The zip code is 22151, or give them a call at area 703-321-8585. And now we want to present Lieutenant Colonel Art Alphin, retired, and a wonderful piece from his tenure at West Point. And today Art heads up the A-Square Company, builders of some of the finest heavy game rifles in the world. And for more information on A-Square, you can write to them at 1 Industrial Park, Bedford, Kentucky. The zip code is 40006. Their phone number is area 502-255-7456.
Many people labor under the notion that the American Revolution was won by a group of sturdy backwoodsmen armed with the Kentucky rifle. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Though backwoodsmen armed with Kentucky rifles did fight and win one battle, Kings Mountain, the vast majority of the combat in the American Revolution was linear warfare on the European model. The American Revolution was won by the Continental line, using the smoothbore musket and the bayonet. I would like to cover this point from the technical end only. To put it simply, the rifle was not technically ready for general combat use. It was, of course, far more accurate than the smoothbore musket, and this accuracy translated into an increase in combat range. But the price paid for this increase was a drastic decrease in volume of fire, plus one or two other disadvantages. A smooth bore is exactly what the name implies. The bore is smooth, much like the interior of an ordinary pipe. But in a rifle, spiral grooves are cut in the bore. It looks something like this. What appears as high spots in the barrel are lands, and the distance from the land on one side
to the land on the other side is called the bore diameter. The low areas are the grooves, and the distance from the bottom of the groove on one side to the bottom of the groove on the other side is called groove diameter. The rifle gains its accuracy because the projectile spins in flight. In order to gain this spin, the bullet has to be groove diameter so that the lands can engrave corresponding notches on the side of the bullet and thereby induce this spin as the bullet travels down the barrel. But if you have a muzzle loader, how do you load the bullet from muzzle down to breech? In the Kentucky rifle, the problem was solved by taking a ball very near to bore diameter and wrapping it in a lubricated cloth patch. Because the cloth patch was relatively easy to cut, this patch had the notches engraved on it at the muzzle when it was loaded, and this patch then acted as a sabot when the weapon was fired. These weapons were made on the frontier by individual rifle makers. The ramrods were of wood, partly due to ease of manufacture and partly to avoid wearing away the rifling and the soft barrel steels in use at the time. The wooden ramrod, though it has great compressive strength, cannot take much bending or shear force. Care had to be taken in loading so as not to break the ramrod. In order to reduce the resistance to loading to the lowest level possible, the patches were normally very heavily lubricated with tallow or grease or some other similar substance. This lubrication, which might contaminate the powder if left in contact for a long time, plus other obvious problems with the patch, made the paper cartridge of the musket impractical. Therefore, the shooter normally had to carry patches, ball, and powder as separate components and load them individually into the muzzle of the weapon. In order to load, the shooter poured powder from his powder horn into a measuring cup. He then poured this powder down the barrel, centered a patch on the muzzle, centered a ball on the patch, started it in the muzzle with his thumb, and then used a starter ramrod. The use of this starter ramrod is essential, for the resistance to cutting those notches is far greater than the strength of man's grip on this ramrod. So the starter ramrod to start the ball and then get it farther down the barrel so as to act as a guide for the wooden ramrod. Now pull out the wooden ramrod and with short strokes so as not to twist the ramrod, seat it down on the powder and then return the ramrod underneath the barrel. Some shooters did use a loading block. This loading block was nothing more than a piece of wood with holes drilled in it and patch ball combinations seated into those holes. This did speed up the loading a little bit. Not that it helped you get it down the muzzle, but it helped the shooter keep all of the various components together. You should remember that all of these things needed to load the Kentucky rifle were either carried on thongs around the shooter's neck or had to be carried in pouches slung across his shoulder. Once the ball was seated on the powder, the shooter could now prime the weapon. Because the bore of the Kentucky rifle was normally very small, the touch hole, pan, frizzen, and hammer were also correspondingly small. So small, in fact, that the large granulations of powder for the main propellant charge were too large to be used in the pan. Therefore, the shooter had to carry a second powder horn with a fine granulation of powder for priming the pan. After closing the frizzen, the shooter was now ready to fire. We will show you this reproduction Kentucky rifle in action against a flintlock smoothbore. For ease of viewing, all of these loading components for the Kentucky rifle will be on a stand right beside the shooter. The musket firer would have only one large pouch with a number of paper cartridges in this pouch, and the pouch would be rigidly held to his body, normally in front with the flap tucked back underneath his waist belt. In fact, a musket shooter could find his cartridges in that pouch just as easily as our demonstration shooter will find them on the stand beside him. The Brown Bess's target will be 50 yards downrange, but will not be shown. The accuracy of the Kentucky rifle is quite obvious, but all is still not bliss. Adjustable sights had not then been invented. Therefore, at the longer ranges, the shooter had to compensate by aiming off the target, the so-called Kentucky windage. In the scene you just watched, I basically aimed dead between the breast pockets of my targets at 80 yards. But at 185 yards, I was aiming level with the top of the head of the target and slightly to the left, and still hit just a bit low right. The ball ricocheted off the ground into the torso and knocked the target down. This would correspond to striking a standing infantryman somewhere in his left thigh. However, Kentucky windage is a relatively nebulous thing and varies greatly from rifle to rifle. The only way it can be learned is through constant firing at a variety of targets. It is something that von Steuben, for example, could not necessarily teach through repetitive drill. If the sights had been adjustable, there would still be no real advance. Most Kentucky rifles varied from 40 to 50 caliber. In the case of this reproduction, I was firing a .445 diameter ball. It weighs 129 grains and exits the muzzle at a bit less than 1,600 feet per second. For a black powder weapon, this is close to the maximum possible velocity. Even then, this Kentucky rifle is only slightly more powerful than a pistol of today chambered for the 9mm Luger cartridge. Because this round leaden ball has a terrible ballistic coefficient, what velocity and energy it did have rapidly decayed due to air resistance. At 185 yards, the weapon has roughly the energy and effect of a 9mm pistol at 130 yards. On the chart, we see the combat range is increased. I have called this battle sight range, but remember, anything beyond 80 or 90 yards requires aim-off or Kentucky windage. The trade-off for range is its greatly reduced volume of fire, and 1.5 rounds per minute is probably generous. In the scene you just watched, it took 52 seconds per round. Lastly, the Kentucky rifle mounted no bayonet. When the enemy closed, as he certainly would because of the low rate of fire, there was no choice but to fight with clubbed rifles and knives. When Kentucky riflemen attempted to stand and fight, they almost invariably were swept from the field. They were effective and made a contribution only when the leader understood the weapon's strengths and advantages and weaknesses and wove this into his organization and battle plan. An example of this is the Battle of Cowpens, where Daniel Morgan arranged his defending troops in 3 general defensive belts, with the Kentucky riflemen being in front near where the houses are today. His instructions to them were to fire 2 rounds only and then retire along a predetermined path to a sheltered area in the rear. The riflemen did considerable damage to Tarleton's forces, who, when they closed on the riflemen's position, found themselves confronted with 2 defensive belts of the Continental Line, the last being near the hedge. I think my statement at the beginning has perhaps become overly obvious. The Kentucky rifle was not technically ready for general combat use. The American Revolution was won by the Continental Line, armed with the flintlock musket and the bayonet.
Friends, the Shootin' Show will be back in 1 minute after this break for your local cable company or television station. Now, friends, we sure want to mention Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. You have over 35,000 firearms bargains, 36 big issues for only $20. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. Their zip code is 68902. You can call them at area 402-463-4589, or for MasterCard and Visa customers for subscriptions only, call 1-800-345-6923. Shotgun News. Get it today. Don't put it off.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're down here on the Chico Gun Range today with Mr. Wayne Baldwin, and he is with AccuSystems from out in Mesa, Arizona. And Wayne, I want to say, first of all, thank you for staying over an extra day. It's been a great pleasure meeting you. And he's going to demonstrate some of the AccuSystems products. Now, we have just seen a little earlier my own test on the AccuSystem, the full-length recoil guide and spring, and also on the compensator. And Wayne's going to tell us a little more about it. I think he also has another gun or two he's going to show us. So, sir, I'm going to let you get to work here.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. I am just more than delighted to be invited to be here with Johnny on his show. We are a young, small, but very rapidly growing company that deals with the very finest of products at the very best of prices. And before I show you the product, let me say this, that what we have, even though the price is very, very congenial with the public, they really do work. And we guarantee that they work, and if they don't, then you get your money back. And that's one thing about AccuSystems that may be unique in the industry. The product that we have right now, we have two things that are of particular interest to the semi-automatic handgun shooter. One is a compensator that is truly drop-in with very little, if any, machine work or fitting necessary. There might be a little bit, and when you call in or you get information on it, then we'll give you more details about that. But this is a compensator in the black oxide finish that goes on the Colt system, 1911 Commander and Officers models, and any clone like that. Those systems that are based on the 1911 mode, this will work on. And just simply works with a compression chamber, a dual compression chamber, and takes care of about half of your muzzle flip. And it is slide mounted, not barrel mounted, no modification to the weapon at all. The other item that we have, and the different designs go in the different weapons, and I'll mention those in a minute, is a dual action buffer spring system. Because of the design of the base, it locks the weapon together, makes it more accurate. It locks everything into solid steel lockup, so it's safer and stronger, makes your weapon last longer. But the real sweet thing about this system is that there is a secondary spring inside the base of the guide rod, a 60-pound secondary spring in the 45 that reduces your recoil by about 40%. And all of these are guaranteed to work, as I've already said. Now, we have them in the various finishes. We have a variety of finishes to match the finish on your weapon. And this happens to be a satin finish. I've already shown you the black oxide. We have a bright stainless finish in the compensator. And they just look wonderful and don't cost a whole lot of money. Then on our Taurus and Beretta mode, we have a barrel-mounted compensator that is attached by set screws and Loctite. And again, works wonderfully, looks great on the weapon, and is a super product for a super price. And we do stand behind our product very well. Just give a quick shot, Johnny, if you can, please, of how the system sets in the slide. Truly drop-in, no gunsmithing, no modification to the weapon. Interchangeable with other weapons if you want to. Take it out and put your old system back in if you desire. But it works like a charm. And I'm anxious to do a little bit of shooting, and I think we're going to do that right now.
Okay, friends, we're going to watch Wayne shoot this new Taurus in .40 Smith & Wesson with the AccuSystems package on it. You'll notice the compensator out on the end of the barrel. So let's just watch the muzzle flip on the gun. Okay, go ahead, Wayne. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see Wayne is pointing to a wedge on this Taurus. It is directly behind the compensator unit, and what that does, it tightens the barrel into the slide. And I believe they had a Marine Corps test that stated a 50% improvement in accuracy on that particular system. So we're going to watch Wayne shoot some falling plates just a moment with this compensated Taurus, and of course we shot the conversion for the government model earlier. Okay, Wayne, go ahead and shoot the falling plates.
Man, that's fun shooting.
Well, I rather enjoyed watching you there, Wayne. I tell you what, that Taurus, I shot the Taurus a couple of times a moment ago, and to me it brings this 40 caliber Taurus down to the level of, say, a little bit less than a 9mm Taurus. Now, talk about a superior competition gun. Most of our viewers know that I particularly favor the 1911 configuration of pistols, but probably my second favorite, now this is just me, and I want to say again because I wouldn't, we have some very fine sponsors and very fine makers who make different types of guns, but the Taurus is one of my other very favorite guns to shoot, mainly because you can shoot the gun cocked and locked. It's good out here at a match, or it's just good if you want to carry it like that, whichever. It is one of the better alternative designs to the 1911. So I was most impressed, sir.
Well, Johnny, it's been a super pleasure being here with you all the way from Arizona. And on behalf of AccuSystems, Don Helms, our company president, the whole state of Arizona, and every distributor and retail dealer that we have in at least 20 states now, 25 in fact, I think, by latest count, I'm more than happy to present to you our official jacket.
Well, sir, thank you.
With AccuSystems on it, and I hope you wear it well, sir.
Now, see, folks, these people, they may not give you the shirt off the back, but they will give you their jacket. So. Indeed. Thank you, Johnny. Thanks so much, Wayne. We've certainly enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you, and we look forward to some good results with your products.
For more information on the fine AccuSystems products, write to them at AccuSystems, 1550 East University, F2 in Mesa, Arizona. The zip code is 85203. Their phone number is area 602-464-1095. We want to extend our appreciation and support to the good folks at Britton's Gun Shop at 517 Louisiana Avenue in Shreveport, Louisiana. The zip code is 71101. Friends, if you're anywhere in the Arklatex area, or regardless of where you are in the U.S. of A. or neighboring countries, if you have a specialty product you'd be interested in, give them a call at Britton's. Their phone number is area 318-221-4131. And by the way, some of our Shoot and Show test guns you will find on sale there, so give them a call. Friends, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Shoot and Show. I'm Johnny Rowland, your host, and we hope that we can come back to your house again next week. If you would like to be on our show with some sort of club or music presentation, give us a call at area 318-222-8515. Remember, copies of our shows are available for $10.95 plus postage per weekly program. And we want to remind you to call your local cable companies because we are free to them and we want to be in as many areas as possible. See you next week.